Tiana, a young black teenage girl, was standing outside St. James Church, patiently waiting for her mother. The peaceful scene was suddenly broken by the sound of loud police sirens. Confused, she turned around only to see two police officers jump out of their car with urgency in their steps. They had guns at their sides, but the real shock came when one officer pointed at her and yelled, "That's her!" Why were they coming for her? Tiana's heart raced. What could she have done wrong? One officer stepped forward, his face stern. "You're under arrest for theft," he said in a cold, commanding voice. Without hesitation, they slapped handcuffs on her wrists, the tight metal digging into her skin. Tiana gasped, her mind spinning. "Wait, theft? What are you talking about?" Her voice trembled as she looked around, hoping someone would help. The crowd from the church had gathered, their whispers filling the air. Some people were shocked, others stood in disbelief, staring at her. Can you imagine being accused of something so serious in front of everyone, without knowing why? Tiana felt the weight of the handcuffs and the eyes of the crowd on her. Why wasn't anyone stepping forward to help her? She was innocent, yet she felt like the whole world was judging her. Tears welled up in Tiana's eyes. "I didn't do anything," she cried, her voice shaking, but it felt like no one could hear her. Suddenly, the crowd parted, and a determined woman strode toward them. It was Tiana's mother, Captain Lisa Anderson, the police captain of their district. But the officers had no idea who she was. What would you do if you saw your child being treated like this, knowing it was a huge mistake? One of the officers stepped in front of her. "Step back, ma'am. We're making an arrest," he said, raising his hand to block her path. Captain Anderson didn't back down. "That's my daughter," she shouted, her voice firm and full of authority. She pushed past the officer's hand, causing him to stumble backward. For a brief moment, the entire crowd froze in silence. Could the officers really not realize what they had done? The officers exchanged uneasy glances. They clearly hadn't recognized her. "We're just following orders," one of them said, his voice unsure. "She fits the description of the thief." Do you think they understood how serious their mistake was now? Tiana, still in handcuffs, looked at her mother with a mix of relief and disbelief. She had never seen her mother so enraged, so powerful. But could even her mother fix this? Could anyone undo the damage that had been done? "Take the cuffs off of her. Now," Captain Anderson commanded, her voice low but dangerous. The officers fumbled with the keys, their hands shaking as they unlocked Tiana's cuffs. We're sorry," one of them mumbled, but the apology fell flat. What good is an apology when the trauma has already been inflicted? When someone has been wronged so deeply that no words can ever make it right? Tiana rubbed her wrists, the marks from the cuffs still fresh on her skin. She looked at the crowd, her face flushed with a mix of anger and embarrassment. Was this how people saw her now? As a criminal? Her mother wasn't finished. "You will publicly apologize to my daughter here in front of everyone who witnessed this injustice," Captain Anderson demanded. "And you will face the consequences for what you've done." The officers looked at each other, their faces pale. The gravity of their actions had finally sunk in, but could they truly face the consequences? Could they admit that their racial bias had led to this horrific mistake? Have you ever seen justice served in real time? Or do you think this was another case of racial profiling that would be swept under the rug? The crowd waited, watching, as the officers began their apology. "We're sorry for what happened here today," one of them said, his voice barely audible. "It was a mistake, and we should have acted differently." But was that enough? Could a few simple words fix what had just been done? Could they erase the fear and humiliation Tiana had experienced? Captain Anderson looked at the crowd, her eyes blazing with fury and determination. "This isn't just about my daughter," she said. "This is about every black person who has been wrongfully accused, humiliated, and mistreated because of the color of their skin. This is about racial profiling, and it has to stop." The crowd nodded in agreement, murmurs of support rising up around them. This wasn't just about Tiana anymore. It was about something bigger, something that had been happening for far too long. But what would it take to change the system? What would it take to ensure that no other innocent person has to go through what Tiana did? As the officers stood there, defeated, Captain Anderson made one last statement. "You'll be hearing from Internal Affairs. And trust me, This will not be forgotten. With that, she wrapped her arm around Tiana, leading her away from the scene. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the impact of what had happened lingered in the air. Do you think those officers will face real consequences for their actions? Or will they be just another example of law enforcement failing to take responsibility? As they walked away, Tiana felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, anger, fear. She knew her mother would fight for justice, but she also knew that the scars from this day would stay with her forever. How do you heal from something like this? How do you move forward when the world has shown you that it sees you as less than human, simply because of the color of your skin? In the end, this wasn't just Tiana's story. It was the story of every person who has ever been wrongfully accused, who has ever had to fight for their dignity in a world that often doesn't care. And it's a story that will continue until we find a way to end racial profiling for good.
If you've watched this far, comment which country you're watching from and leave a 100 in the comment section, because you are type of person that likes to finish what they started. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to get notified whenever we drop new videos.